I thought I found a note in a used book. I had no idea it would lead to him. The bookmark fell out on page 73, like it had been waiting for her. Maya didn't even see it at first. She was too busy doing what she always did in the quiet corner of the Riverside Public Library, settling her tote bag, lining up her pens the way she liked them, and opening a used paperback like it was a doorway instead of paper. The book was a scuffed copy of The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, rescued from the library's Take One, Leave One shelf. It wasn't even her usual genre, not exactly. Maya was a mystery and nonfiction woman who only strayed into glamour and scandal when she needed a break from herself. But the cover looked warm, the spine was cracked in a friendly way, and something about the book felt chosen. When the bookmark slipped out and flittered to the table, she froze mid-page turn. It wasn't a normal bookmark. It was laminated, slightly crooked around the edges, as if someone had tried to do it at home with an office laminator that ate paper for fun. On one side was a list written in neat, slanted handwriting. If you read like me, you'll like slow burns that hurt a lil, strong women who choose themselves, dialogue that feels like real people, plot twists that are earned, not cheap, chapters that end like a slam door. Under that, in smaller print, my rules. 1. No skipping ahead. You'll ruin your own life. 2. Highlight only what punches you in the chest. 3. If you cry, drink water. If you don't cry, drink water anyway. Maya blinked, then laughed quietly into her sleeve. Because it wasn't just funny, it was accurate. She turned it over. On the back were tiny annotations in different inks, like the bookmark had traveled through moods. If you love this, try Daisy Jones, but don't expect it to heal you. Page 121, read twice before you decide how you feel about her. If you've ever had to start over, this book will find you. At the bottom was a section labeled, My Star Rating Scale for People Who Take This Seriously. 1 star, why did I waste my eyeballs? 2 stars, decent, but I'm not texting anyone about it. 3 stars, good enough to recommend without apologizing. 4 stars, I will defend this book in public. 5 stars, changed my brain chemistry, call my therapist. Maya's throat tightened in a way that surprised her. She read like that. She thought like that. She'd been the kid who wrote notes in the margins of library books until a librarian gently explained with saintly patience that other people liked clean pages. Maya had been embarrassed for a week and then started keeping a notebook of quotes instead. She still did, even now at 34, even with a job that required spreadsheets and polite emails that ended in best. This bookmark wasn't just a list. It was a person's reading soul, laminated and left behind. Maya ran her thumb along the edge, then checked the inside cover of the book for a name. Nothing. No book plate, no signature, no scribbled property of. Just the usual used book smell and the kind of dog-eared pages that meant somebody had loved it before. Maya felt a flicker of something she didn't have a better word for. Possibility. She tucked the bookmark between the pages again and read, but she couldn't focus. Every few paragraphs, she found herself glancing down at it as if it might speak. After an hour, she gave up and pulled out her phone. Maya didn't post on Reddit much. She had an account, sure, one made in a lonely year after her divorce, when her apartment had been too quiet and the internet had been too loud. She mostly lurked in book subreddits and whispered her opinions into upvotes. But this deserved a post. She snapped a picture of the bookmark, careful to angle it so the handwriting was clear, but the book title wasn't too obvious, then typed, Found an annotated bookmark in a used library book that matches my exact reading habits? I'm losing my mind a little. Whoever made this bookmark is basically my reading twin. It has rules, it has a rating system, it has emotional warnings. If this is yours and you want it back, I will return it, but also please know you might be my soulmate. Yes, I'm dramatic. No, I'm not sorry. She hesitated before hitting post. Something about calling a stranger a soulmate felt too tender, too hopeful. Then she hit post anyway, because she was tired of being careful all the time. The post didn't do much for the first few hours. A handful of comments, a few people saying, "This is so cute," and book people are unhinged in the best way. Someone asked what pens were used. Someone said the star rating scale was therapist-coded. Maya smiled at her screen in the quiet of her apartment that evening, curled on her couch with a mug of tea. She replied to a few comments, then tossed her phone aside and opened the book again. Halfway through, she cried. She drank water like the bookmark told her to. When he messaged me, I realized the bookmark wasn't the only thing we had in common. The next morning, her phone was buzzing like it was trying to shake itself off the nightstand. She blinked, grabbed it, and sat up so fast she nearly pulled a muscle in her dignity. Her Reddit post had exploded. Thousands of upvotes, hundreds of comments, people tagging their friends, people posting their own bookmark stories. Someone made a meme with the star rating scale and the caption, "Changed my brain chemistry. Call my therapist." Maya's cheeks warmed. She wasn't used to being perceived by the internet. Then she saw the message, a direct message request from a user named Laminated Lines. Her thumb hovered over it. Her heart did something annoyingly hopeful. She opened it. "Hi. I'm going to say this carefully because the last time I left something with my handwriting in a book, it ended up complicated. But that bookmark is mine. Also, you're right. We might be reading soulmates. I made it during a really weird year when I needed my books to talk back to me. I started leaving them in books I loved, like little messages in a bottle, and then I stopped because... Actually, never mind. If you want to meet to return it, I'd like that. If you want to keep it, I'd understand. Either way, thank you for posting. I didn't know anyone would ever find it." Maya stared at the message until her eyes blurred. Complicated? Weird year? Messages in a bottle? Maya typed back and deleted it twice before she finally sent, "Hi. I am absolutely returning it because it feels like a piece of you, and also because my guilt would haunt me forever if I kept it. But I'm also going to be honest. I want to meet you. Not just for the bookmark. Where do you want to meet?" The reply came quickly. "The Riverside Public Library. There's a coffee shop across the street called Bean and Burrow. Today at 4 if you can. I'll be the person pretending to read while secretly panicking." Maya laughed breathlessly. "I'll be the other person pretending to read while secretly panicking." She spent the rest of the day acting like a normal human who definitely was not meeting a mysterious bookmark stranger from Reddit. She failed. By noon, she'd changed outfits twice. By 2, she'd convinced herself this was either the start of a cute love story or the beginning of a true crime documentary. By 3:30, she was standing in front of her bathroom mirror, trying to decide if her eyeliner said approachable or I know where the bodies are buried. At 3:45, she grabbed the bookmark, placed it inside the book like a heart in a box, and drove to the library with her stomach flipping like pages in a windstorm. Bean and Burrow smelled like espresso and cinnamon and other people's conversations. It was busy, but not chaotic, the kind of place where students camped out with laptops and couples sat close enough to share warmth. Maya scanned the room and spotted the library's familiar quiet folks gathered at tables with books. Then she saw him. He was sitting near the window, a paperback open in front of him. He wasn't reading it. He was staring at the same line like he'd been trapped there. He wore a dark green sweater that looked soft and expensive in a way that wasn't flashy. His hair was a little messy, like he'd run his fingers through it one too many times. He had glasses that made him look both serious and approachable, which felt unfair. Maya's brain offered a helpful commentary. Great, he's attractive, because of course he is. He looked up. Their eyes met, and something in Maya's chest clicked into place like a bookmark sliding between pages. He stood quickly, too quickly, and the chair scraped a little. He winced. "Hi," he said, and his voice was warm, like a song you didn't know you remembered. "Maya?" She blinked. "Yes, your Laminated Lines?" He smiled, awkward and honest. "Not my government name, unfortunately." Maya laughed, and it loosened the knot in her chest. "I'm Jonah," he said. "Jonah Ellis." "Maya," she repeated, "because sometimes your name feels new when a stranger says it like it matters. Maya Reynolds." He glanced down at the book in her hands. "You brought it." "I did," she said, then held it out like a peace offering. "And your masterpiece?" Jonah took it gently, as if it might crumble into dust. He slid the bookmark out and looked at it for a second like he couldn't believe it was real again. "I can't believe you found it," he murmured. "I can't believe you wrote it," Maya said. "It's weirdly perfect." Jonah's eyes flicked up. "That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said about my unhinged laminated coping mechanism." Maya pulled out the chair across from him. "Mind if I sit?" "Please," he said, too quickly again, then cleared his throat. "Yes, sit. I'm normal." Maya sat and set her toad on the floor. I'm also normal. They both stared at each other for a beat, like two people waiting for the other to turn the page first. Jonah tapped the bookmark. So, you read like me? Apparently, Maya said, which is unsettling because I thought my book habits were a private kind of weird. Same, Jonah said. I didn't realize anyone else had a rating system that included calling their therapist. Maya grinned. To be fair, some books deserve therapy. Jonah's smile widened, and for a moment Maya forgot to breathe. A barista called out an order. Someone laughed too loudly. A spoon clinked. Normal life continuing, while something strange and electric started between them. So, Maya said, because she needed to anchor herself, you said the last time you left your handwriting in a book, it got complicated. Jonah's fingers tightened around the bookmark. He hesitated, then said, yeah, I used to do this a lot. Leave bookmarks? Leave pieces of myself, Jonah corrected gently. In books, I'd write notes, quotes, sometimes a little drawing, and I'd leave them in library books or used books, not to be creepy, just, I don't know. I liked the idea of someone finding it when they needed it. Maya's expression softened. That's not creepy. That's kind. Jonah laughed once, short. My ex disagreed. Ah, there it was, the twist tucked behind the cover. Jonah continued, voice careful. She found one, not in a used book, but in my apartment. She thought it was a love note. Maya's stomach dipped. And it wasn't? It was a note for myself, Jonah admitted. A quote I wrote down from a book we both read. It was about choosing joy, even when it's hard. She thought I'd written it for someone else, or about someone else. Maya watched him. His face wasn't bitter, just honest. What happened? She asked softly. She didn't believe me, Jonah said. We were already fraying around the edges. That just snapped something. I'm sorry, Maya said. Jonah shrugged, but his eyes gave him away. It's fine. It was a long time coming. Maya hesitated. I'm divorced. Jonah's eyebrows lifted. Yeah? Yeah, she said, then gave a half smile. Turns out marrying your college boyfriend because you're scared of being alone is not a strong foundation. Jonah's mouth quirked. Books warn us about that kind of plot, and we still do it. Exactly, Maya said, and now I'm a cautionary tale. Jonah shook his head. No, you're a person who learned something. The way he said it, so sure, so kind, made Maya's throat tighten again. She glanced down to hide it and saw the bookmark in his hands. He was tracing the words with his thumb like they were braille. I made it during my divorce, Jonah admitted quietly. Not the breakup, the paperwork. The part where you realize the person you built your life around is suddenly a legal document. Maya swallowed. That part is brutal. It is, Jonah agreed. They sat in that shared understanding for a moment, two people who had survived the same kind of ending. Then Jonah's face shifted, like he remembered something. He looked up. Can I tell you the other reason this is kind of wild? Please, Maya said. He pointed to the list on the bookmark. Those preferences, those weren't random. I made this after I met someone. Maya blinked. You did? Jonah nodded. At a library event, a book club thing. She said she liked slow burns that hurt a little, and he laughed under his breath. I thought it was the most honest description of romance I'd ever heard. Maya's heart did a strange stutter. Okay, she said carefully. So, who was she? Jonah looked directly at her. You, he said. Maya stared at him, stunned. What? Jonah looked as surprised as she felt, like he'd said it and then realized it out loud. I didn't know it was you, he rushed. I mean, I knew your face when you walked in today, but I didn't connect it until you said your name. Maya Reynolds. You came to that library event 2 years ago. You were sitting near the back. You asked a question about whether a character can be redeemed if they never apologize. Maya's mouth went dry. She remembered that event. She had gone because her friend had begged her to, and she'd sat in the back because she didn't want to talk to anyone, because her divorce papers were in her bag like a weight. She remembered the question because she'd meant it in the deepest way. I remember, she whispered. Jonah exhaled, relieved. You made everyone quiet for a second, in a good way, like you'd said something real. Afterward, I wanted to talk to you, but you left early. I never saw you again. Maya's chest felt too full. So you made the bookmark because of me? She asked, voice small. Jonah's cheeks flushed. Not because of you, not like that. But you reminded me there were people who read like I did, who felt books deeply. It made me feel less alone. Maya pressed her hand against her chest, like she could hold her heart in place. Wow, she managed. Jonah smiled, a little shy. So apparently I've been accidentally writing bookmarks inspired by you for years. Maya let out a laugh that sounded half like a sob. This is either fate or an extremely specific algorithm. Jonah's eyes crinkled. Reddit's matchmaking services are underrated. Maya shook her head, still stunned. Okay, twist accepted. Jonah leaned back slightly, as if giving her space. If this is too much, I get it. I didn't mean to. No, Maya said quickly. It's not too much. It's just, I didn't expect my day to include someone telling me I accidentally inspired their laminated emotional support bookmark. Jonah's laugh was real this time. When you say it like that, it sounds even more ridiculous. Maya grinned. Ridiculous is kind of my brand. Jonah looked at her, gaze steady. It suits you. The words landed softly, but they stayed. Maya stared at him for a second too long and then remembered her coffeeless hands. Do you want to get something? Like a drink? A muffin? A symbolic pastry of new beginnings? Jonah smiled wider. Yes, I'd like a symbolic pastry of new beginnings. They stood in line together, and it felt strangely easy, like they had already met in another chapter and were just continuing where they left off. Jonah ordered a black coffee and a cinnamon roll. Maya ordered a latte and a blueberry muffin. When they sat back down, Jonah broke off a piece of cinnamon roll and held it out. Maya raised an eyebrow. Are you feeding me? Jonah looked amused. Consider it an offering. Peace treaty. Book club initiation. Maya took it and ate it, because she was brave enough for cinnamon roll diplomacy. Okay, she said after chewing. Now I have to ask, why did you stop leaving them? Jonah's expression shifted again. He glanced out the window, then back at her. Because, he said quietly, I left one in the wrong book. Maya frowned. Wrong book? Jonah nodded. I used to leave them in books that meant something to me, books that helped, books that were gentle. But once I was in a rush, and I tucked one into a book without thinking. And? Jonah's mouth tightened. It was a book about grief. Someone found it and posted it online. Not like your post, more like angry. They said it felt invasive, like someone had tried to force hope into their sadness. Maya's heart softened. Oh. Jonah shrugged, but he looked a little raw. I didn't mean it that way, but it made me realize you can't always leave pieces of yourself in someone else's story and expect it to land the way you intend. Maya nodded slowly. That makes sense. Jonah traced the edge of his coffee cup. So I stopped. Maya looked at the bookmark in his hand. But you didn't throw them away. Jonah glanced at it, then at her. No. Maya's voice was gentle. Maybe you just hadn't met the right finder. Jonah's gaze held hers. Maybe. A comfortable silence settled between them, filled with coffee aroma and the hum of people living their ordinary lives around them. Maya realized she didn't feel nervous anymore. She felt curious, warm, awake. Do you want to walk? She asked suddenly. Like around the library or the river trail? We can pretend we're characters in a romance novel who meet in a charming small-town coffee shop and then stroll dramatically. Jonah laughed. Do we have to stroll dramatically? Yes, Maya said, dead serious. Jonah held up the bookmark. Fair.
They took their drinks to go and walked across the street to the library, where the winter air had teeth, but the sunlight was soft. Inside, the library felt like it always did, quiet and steady and full of borrowed time. They wandered past shelves, and Jonah pointed out sections like he was giving her a tour of a place she already knew. This, he said, gesturing to a row of books, is where I come when I need to remember I'm not the only person who thinks too much. Maya smiled. And this? Jonah led her to the romance aisle and said solemnly, This is where I go when I want to suffer on purpose. Maya laughed so loud a librarian glanced at them. They lowered their voices and kept walking, closer now, their shoulders nearly brushing. They ended up near the windows in the back, where a row of reading chairs faced the river beyond the glass. Jonah stopped. This is where the event was, he said quietly, 2 years ago. Maya's gaze drifted over the chairs. She could almost see herself sitting there, clutching her bag, feeling like her life had been ripped in half. She looked at Jonah. I remember leaving early. I remember wanting to follow you, Jonah admitted. Maya's breath caught. Why didn't you? Jonah smiled a little, self-deprecating. Because you looked like someone who didn't want to be saved. You looked like someone who wanted to be left alone to figure it out. Maya's eyes stung. He had seen her. Not the version she showed the world, competent, polite, fine, but the quiet ache underneath. That was accurate, she whispered. Jonah's voice softened. I didn't want to interrupt your healing. Maya swallowed. That's the most respectful almost love story I've ever heard. Jonah laughed gently. Almost love stories are my specialty. I'm trying to upguide. Maya looked at him, really looked at him, and felt something shift. Not a lightning bolt, not fireworks. Something steadier, like a book opening to the right page. Okay, she said, voice light because her heart was heavy in a new way. So what now, Jonah Ellis? Are we going to have a full love story or just keep living in the prologue? Jonah's eyes widened slightly, then softened. I'd like a full love story, he said. If you do. Maya's pulse thudded. I do. Jonah smiled, slow and real. Good. Maya glanced around, suddenly aware they were in a library and there were rules about noise, and probably romance too. Jonah seemed to read her mind because he leaned in and said quietly, We can start with something simple. Like what? Maya whispered back. Like, Jonah said, I take you to dinner. You tell me your favorite books. I tell you mine. We argue about whether characters need redemption arcs. We laugh too loud and get shushed again. Maya grinned. That sounds perfect. Jonah hesitated, then held out the bookmark again. Also, I want you to have this. Maya blinked. But it's yours. Jonah nodded. It was mine. But you found it. And if I'm honest, it feels like it belongs to both of us now. Maya stared at the laminated bookmark, then at Jonah. Her throat tightened again because apparently that was her new hobby today. She took it gently. Okay, she said. But I'm making a new rule. Jonah's eyebrows lifted. Oh? Maya smiled. Rule 4. If you meet someone who reads your soul like a book, don't pretend you're not interested. Jonah's grin was great. That's a good rule. Maya tucked the bookmark into her tote like it was something fragile and precious. As they walked out of the library together, Jonah held the door open for her, and she stepped into the cold air with a warmth she hadn't expected to find. The river moved steadily beyond the glass, carrying reflections of sky and winter branches. Maya thought about all the books she'd read alone, all the stories she'd loved in silence. Maybe she realized some stories didn't arrive all at once. Maybe some of them started as a laminated bookmark in a used book on a shelf, waiting for the right hands, the right heart, the right moment. Jonah glanced at her as they reached the sidewalk. So, dinner? Maya pretended to think, tapping her chin dramatically. She said. I don't know. I have a rule about slow burns. Jonah played along, eyes warm. And? Maya smiled. This one doesn't have to hurt. Jonah's expression softened into something that made her believe it. It won't, he promised. And for the first time in a long time, Maya believed a promise without needing proof. They walked toward the coffee shop again, two people who'd found each other in the margins of a story, ready to write something new. One page at a time.
Our first date didn't begin with nerves. That was the strange part. I'd spent years believing first dates were supposed to feel like standing on the edge of something unstable, like holding your breath while hoping the ground didn't shift under you. My past experiences had taught me to brace myself for disappointment, for polite conversation that went nowhere, for that familiar moment when you realize you're trying harder than the person across the table. But when the evening came, there was no frantic energy, no spiraling thoughts, just a quiet anticipation, the kind that feels like something aligning rather than colliding. Jonah suggested dinner, but when he said it, he followed quickly with, Nothing fancy. I don't want to shout over music or feel like we're performing versions of ourselves. That alone made me smile. I just want to hear you talk, he added. So we chose a small place near the river, the kind of restaurant that didn't advertise itself as romantic, but somehow managed to feel intimate anyway. Warm lighting, wooden tables worn smooth by years of elbows and conversations, a menu small enough that you knew each dish had been chosen carefully. When I arrived, Jonah was already there. He stood when he saw me, not dramatically, just instinctively, like it hadn't occurred to him not to. You look beautiful, he said. There was no hesitation in his voice, no exaggeration, no expectation attached to it, just a statement. Thank you, I replied, feeling something soften in my chest. You look like yourself. He laughed. That might be the best compliment I've gotten all week. We sat, and for a brief moment, neither of us rushed to speak, not because of awkwardness, but because it felt like we were both recognizing something unspoken. This didn't feel like a first meeting. It felt like a continuation, as if the bookmark had been a prologue, and this was simply the next chapter opening naturally. I thought I'd be more nervous, I admitted, once our drinks arrived. Me too, Jonah said. But this feels familiar, not in a boring way, in a safe way. That word again, familiar. It followed us through the evening like a thread. We started with books because books were the bridge between us, the common language that didn't require translation. He told me about the novel that carried him through the long nights after his divorce, the one he reread because it reminded me that grief could coexist with hope. I told him about the memoir I kept returning to every time I felt like I was failing at life, the one that reminded me that survival didn't always look brave and healing didn't always look linear. We debated characters like they were real people. We defended flawed protagonists with passion. We admitted which books broke us in ways we never fully recovered from. At one point, Jonah smiled and said, "You read the way I wish more people did. You don't rush to judge. You sit with discomfort." I shrugged. Life trained me.
That opened the door. The conversation shifted slowly, naturally, from books to the lives that shaped the way we read them. "What made you leave the library early that night?" Jonah asked quietly. The question wasn't invasive. It was careful, like he was placing it between us and letting me decide whether to pick it up. I stared into my glass for a moment. "I had my divorce papers in my bag," I said finally. I wasn't ready to talk about stories with happy endings. Jonah didn't flinch. He didn't rush to respond. "That makes sense," he said simply. The relief I felt in that moment surprised me. "What about you?" I asked. "Why did you start leaving bookmarks?" He leaned back slightly, eyes thoughtful. "Because I felt invisible," he said. "And books reminded me that someone, somewhere, understood me. I wanted to pass that feeling on." Something clicked inside me then. Jonah didn't leave bookmarks because he wanted to be noticed. He left them because he wanted someone else to feel seen. Dinner ended without either of us checking the time. We paid and stepped outside, the cool air brushing against warm skin. The river was close, its steady movement reflecting the streetlights like a quiet reminder that things move forward even when you're standing still. We walked without a destination, our steps naturally falling into rhythm. "This doesn't feel like a first date," I said after a while. "No," Jonah agreed. "It feels like we skipped ahead to the part where you're honest." He stopped near the railing, turning to face me fully. "I don't want to rush this," he said. "But I don't want to pretend I don't feel something either." I met his gaze. "I'm not in a hurry," I said, "but I am interested." His smile wasn't flashy. It was warm, real. "Good," he said. When we hugged goodbye, it wasn't awkward or desperate. It was steady, intentional. And as I walked back to my car, I realized something unexpected. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't replaying the night in my head, analyzing every word. I was simply grateful. The days that followed didn't feel dramatic. They felt intentional. Jonah and I didn't rush into anything. We didn't overanalyze either. We let communication flow naturally. Texts that didn't feel obligatory, calls that stretched longer than planned, silences that felt comfortable instead of heavy. A week later, he asked if I wanted to meet again, at the library, not by accident, on purpose. We walked the aisles slowly, occasionally stopping to pull books from shelves like offerings. "This one wrecked me," I said, handing him a novel. He flipped through it, nodding. "That tracks." "This one helped me breathe again," he said, offering me another. At one point, Jonah stopped and reached into his jacket pocket. "I have something for you," he said. I raised an eyebrow. Should I be concerned? "Only emotionally," he smiled. He handed me a small envelope. Inside was a new bookmark. Not laminated, just thick, textured paper. On it, in his handwriting, "New rules. 1. Take your time. 2. Say what you mean. 3. Choose peace over potential." At the bottom, 1-star rating pending. My chest tightened. "You made this for me?" "For us," he said softly, "if that's okay." We sat by the windows where everything had quietly begun. "I spent a long time hiding pieces of myself in books," Jonah said. "I don't want to do that anymore." "I don't want to read love stories from the outside anymore either," I replied. He reached for my hand, slowly, giving me time. I didn't pull away.
That bookmark you found, he said. I thought it was just a coincidence. I thought it was just a note. He smiled. Turns out it was an invitation. To be honest, to be seen, to begin again. We didn't kiss right away. We didn't need to. Because sometimes the most powerful moment in a love story isn't the grand gesture. It's the quiet realization that this isn't just a story you stumbled into. It's the one you're finally ready to live. And this time, we weren't hiding anything between the pages. We were writing it together, one page at a time. Choosing each other didn't happen all at once. There was no dramatic declaration, no sudden shift where everything became clear in a single moment. Instead, it happened slowly, in the spaces between conversations, in the way Jonah started saying we without thinking, in the way I noticed myself making room for him in my life without fear. It happened in ordinary moments, like the first time he came over to my apartment. I had warned him ahead of time. It's small, I said, and it still looks like someone who's figuring things out lives here. He smiled through the phone. Good, he said. I'm not looking for perfect. When he arrived, he didn't comment on the mismatched furniture or the stack of books on the coffee table. He didn't glance around like he was assessing a space that needed improvement. Instead, he paused in the doorway. This feels like you, he said. No one had ever said that about my home before. We cooked dinner together that night, bumping into each other in the kitchen, laughing when the pasta boiled over. Music played softly in the background, something instrumental that filled the room without demanding attention. At one point, Jonah leaned against the counter, watching me stir a sauce that probably didn't need stirring anymore. You're peaceful when you're not trying to be, he said. I looked at him. Is that a compliment? It's an observation, he replied, the best kind. After dinner, we sat on the couch, close but not touching, a familiar pattern between us, comfortable, intentional. I've been thinking, Jonah said after a while. I turned toward him, already listening. I don't want this to be something we drift into without naming, he continued, but I also don't want to rush it into a shape that doesn't fit. My chest tightened, not with fear, but with recognition. I feel the same way, I said. I'm not afraid of commitment. I'm afraid of pretending. Jonah nodded. Me too. We sat with that truth between us, letting it settle. Later that night, as he stood to leave, there was a pause at the door. The kind of pause that feels significant without being heavy. He looked at me, really looked at me. Can I kiss you? He asked. The simplicity of the question nearly undid me. Yes, I said, please. The kiss wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It felt like an agreement. Like a conversation without words. Weeks passed. Then months. Jonah and I built something steady, brick by brick. We learned each other's rhythms. The way he needed quiet after long days. The way I needed reassurance when my mind started racing ahead. We didn't avoid hard conversations. We approached them carefully, honestly. One night while we were lying on my couch, Jonah traced patterns on my arm. I've been thinking about the bookmarks, he said. Oh, I smiled. Are they making a comeback? Not the way I used to do them, he said. But I miss writing. I miss leaving pieces of myself somewhere meaningful. I considered that. What if you didn't leave them for strangers anymore? He looked at me. What are you suggesting? What if you wrote them for moments, I said. For places, for memories. Jonah's eyes softened. For us, I said. A week later, he gave me a book. It was one I'd mentioned in passing weeks earlier, a story about starting over later in life. Inside, on the first page, was a bookmark. Handwritten. No rules this time. Just a single sentence. This is where we were when we chose each other. My threat tightened. I'm keeping this forever, I said. I hoped you would, he replied.
The moment we truly realized this wasn't just a romance, but a partnership, came quietly, on an ordinary Tuesday. I had a bad day at work, one of those days where nothing goes wrong enough to justify the weight you feel, but everything feels heavy anyway. I didn't want solutions. I didn't want encouragement. I just wanted to sit in silence. When Jonah arrived that evening, he didn't try to fix anything. He didn't ask probing questions. He handed me a cup of tea and sat beside me. I'm here, he said. That's all. I leaned into him, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to carry myself alone. Later, as we sat in that quiet understanding, Jonah spoke softly. I don't want to be another chapter you outgrow, he said. I turned toward him. You're not, I said. You're part of the story now. He smiled, slow and sure. That's all I ever wanted, he said. The library remained our place, not because it was where we met, but because it was where we remembered who we were before each other and who we were becoming together. One afternoon, months later, we sat by the windows again. Jonah pulled out a small notebook. What's that? I asked. My drafts, he said. I'm writing again. I smiled. What are you writing? He looked at me.
About us, but not as a love story. Then what? As proof, he said, that some connections aren't loud, they're aligned. I rested my head on his shoulder. I like that, I said. Me too. We didn't know what the future would look like, but for the first time, that uncertainty didn't scare me. Because love, I realized, isn't about grand beginnings or perfect timing. Sometimes it starts as a bookmark in a used book, and sometimes, if you're brave enough to follow it, it leads you home.